Was the SARS-CoV-2 virus, the virus that causes COVID-19, built in a lab? Like, was it a genetically engineered bioweapon that was released accidentally on purpose from a virology lab in Wuhan, China?
It's all a big cover-up.
Well, there's a lot of information out there to sift through if you want some answers. Some of it is actual information, some of it is misinformation, stuff that's wrong, and some of it is disinformation, stuff that's intentionally wrong to make you believe something that's not true. SHABAM the show is all about kids surviving a zombie apocalypse, where we looked at, among other things, how you can determine if something is true or not. So whether we're talking about the existence of zombies or flying humanoids like we did in season 1, or theories about the origins of the coronavirus, we can use the same tools and steps to sift through information because it can be hard to know what to believe.
Anytime someone wants you to
Believe
something, you should ask,
Believe me.
why? Why should I believe that?
So,
How do you answer the question, why should I believe this?
in the show, we proposed a 3-step process for sifting through information, and we'll look at that in part 2.
But before we take those steps, we have to change the way that we think. And to do that, we need a tool.
We're gonna bust out a thinking tool, which we call our
Mental Truth Probability Meter.
The probability meter works like this. Instead of thinking about the world in binary, where things are either true, the coronavirus is human-made, or not true, the coronavirus is natural. Start thinking of things as being on a continuum, where really, really probable is on one end, and really, really not probable or improbable is on the other end.
It also means you have to stop using the word impossible.
But that's impossible to do.
A true scientist will never rule out something and say, that's impossible, that can't be true, because we don't know. We're still learning about the world.
Like Tim Verstynen, a neuroscientist that we talked to in episode 9 of season 1.
I'm a scientist, so nothing's impossible?
The closest he came to saying impossible was this.
It's a very, very low probability of occurring.
You can think like this too by switching on your probability meter.
You're basically creating a new habit. So when anyone tells you something like X,
Instead of saying, is X possible? The question is X probable?
You're thinking in probabilities.
and this is how scientists think because it's useful for adjusting one's thinking based on new information. If new information comes up, the probability can shift either towards less likely or more likely.
Thinking in probabilities is also useful because
We don't like to think that we're wrong. We don't like to admit that we're wrong. We don't like to realize that we're wrong.
Which is, of course, silly, because realizing you're wrong is how we learn what's right, but it still feels bad. When using probabilities, it feels better to change your mind because instead of having to flip from one position to another,
I believe it. I don't believe it.
you're just adjusting your probability, leaving it open for it to go back. And by the way, what we didn't mention in the show is that there's a name for this kind of thinking, and it's called Bayesian thinking, based on Thomas Bayes, a Presbyterian minister who was also a statistics guy and had a theorem, and that theorem is central to modern science. So, thinking in probabilities helps you think like a scientist because 1, it allows you to easily adjust for new information, and 2, it doesn't feel as bad when you change your mind. Now let's use that scientific thinking and apply it to our coronavirus question. First thing we have to do then is change the question so we can think in probabilities. Is it probable that the coronavirus was made in a lab? So here's our question, here's the probability meter, and now we're ready to adjust our thinking based on new information. Now we're ready to process information, and we're gonna do that in part 2 with our 3 steps. If you want to skip to part 2, that's here. If you want to hear all of episode 10, that's here. And if you want to learn more about Bayesian thinking, we put some videos over here. And of course, subscribe down here.